Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is David Groff, and it's quite an honor to be here with you this morning to share a little bit about who I am and my life and all those good things. So, 5 minutes is an interesting amount of time to be able to put it all together. So if I go too long or run down too many rabbit holes, I'm sure you'll accept my apologies for that. But very excited to be here today. Born and raised here in Lancaster. I grew up as the child of Bob and Ellen Groff. No big shoes to fill there in terms of either childhood or adult life. And, we grew up coming here every Sunday morning, baptized, confirmed. Everything was just, a beautiful, beautiful way to grow up here in the 70s, really, in terms of my memories of St. James. Lucky enough to go off to college, lucky enough to end up in Chicago, Illinois for the start of my adulthood life. Lucky enough to start working for the Chicago Bulls when I got there 6 months before our first NBA championship in 1991, and just the start of a decent adult life. But just to step back, my memories of St. James growing up were profound in terms of the love, the nurturing, the welcoming, the warmth, the excitement, the programming, everything about St. James for a child, not just being, mom and dad's kid, but was love. And that was, left inside of me in terms of the church experience of a parent bringing children up through the church life, which is incredibly important, as we know. So, when we become young adults, we move to big cities sometimes if we're fortunate, or that's what our calling is. And that was mine. I didn't go to church a lot in my 20s. It was, even though it's inside of you, I feel like 20-year-olds sometimes take a while to say that was a seed that I'm going to see grow. And married and moved down to Phoenix, Arizona, started working for the Phoenix Suns. We had two beautiful children. And that's, I think, when all of a sudden, that seed that has been planted in us says, let's get back to church. And sure enough, that's what happened down in Scottsdale and Phoenix area. And for me, working for professional sports teams, being down in Phoenix, and having two young kids, it was important for us to get there for a number of reasons. Obviously, we walked sometimes in our parents' footsteps as it relates to that, but also, it's nice to have an hour off in terms of dropping the kids off at Sunday school and having a moment, in terms of that. And so certainly that's what it was. I went through a divorce in the mid 2000s, 2006, and all of a sudden sitting there as a 39-year-old young man, an 8 and a 10-year-old son, church even became more important to me in terms of what I was going through and what I was working through. And I knew it was even more important that I got my kids to church. That was very important. Now, picture me in my 40s. I'm 57 now. I kind of was going out the side door. I wasn't the Bob and Ellen Groff always shaking the rector's hand down the middle. I was like, I'm fine just going out the side door, getting in my car and being out of here. Well, mom and dad come to visit me, and sure enough, oh no, we're going through the middle of the line. We're shaking the rector's hand and tell you you're not getting out of here. And it was such a great experience with Bill Jackson, and went through. He's like, let's you and I go to lunch, and Phil took me to lunch, Father Phil, and began a whole domino effect for me in terms of my church life, and it was really, really special. And he's like, Dave, listening to my experiences of professional and personal and stuff like that, he goes, I think you'd be a great guy to run the men's group. I was like, the men's group? I was like, what do I have to do? He goes, well, we're going to get all the men together. He goes, I find in churches that if the men, when they come, kind of know each other and feel comfortable, especially as parents, he goes, that can have a different level in terms of warmth and care and excitement for the church. And so sure enough, I found myself running the men's group, and it was a wonderful opportunity. Lo and behold, a couple of years later, I got asked to run for Vestry, Christ Church of the Ascension, called mom and dad. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been asked to run for Vestry. I was like, this is pretty cool. And so I ran, and I lost. I had to call mom. Your son lost. Here I am, 41 years old. And I was like, oh, that was 2012, January. Mom died that summer. And I was here for services, obviously living out in Arizona. And sure enough, 3 days after her funeral service here, I go back to Arizona. and somebody stepped down and I was the next one up. And I was just like, okay. So that began in 2012, my vestry run down in Paradise Valley, Arizona. It was spectacular. It concluded with me being asked to be the senior warden in terms of what we were going through. We had to have a rector search during that time period and roll our sleeves up. One of the most important things I learned during that time in terms of being on vestry and attending church is trying to keep the two kind of separated, because when you're sitting there, you don't want to be thinking about, what does that cost to fix up? You want to be sitting there present in worship on a day-to-day or a Sunday-to-Sunday basis. And so that was a learning lesson for me in terms of being a little bit younger and sitting there, but just embracing it and getting involved with it in so many different levels. Mom's loss and me deciding to move back to Lancaster was a big deal for me. I spent a year thinking about it, and I came back to Lancaster in 2016, and Mom had been gone 4 years. I was blessed enough to live with Dad for 3 years out in his home as I kind of reacclimated to Lancaster. I was blessed enough to come to church with him a number of times. He would always say, let's go to 9:34. I'm like, Dad, I can't do it. I got to sleep an extra hour. And I regret that, and I should have done that. In his honor today, I did not wear a bow tie, but I wore which was kind of cool. So I've been back 7 years. St. James, as you can tell from my story in terms of my youth, is incredibly important to me. Just as I got home 3 days from Mom's funeral service, within 2 weeks of Dad's funeral service here, I get a phone call from Kit, and I'm driving along. And I'm like, she's like, it's your time. I said, Kit, I'm really, really, really kind of busy. I got, this, that. She goes, you're going to be great, and we need you. And I said, Kit, there would be no higher honor than for me to come back and put myself forward. Now, I will tell each of you, the other 5 candidates are amazing, like amazing. So St. James is in wonderful shape with those that we choose to stand and to join Vestry and do a great job as we move forward. And that I believe. So we're in fantastic shape, and I feel blessed to be up here today. And I have no idea how long I've spoken. So that's good news or bad news, but I really am honored to be here. And thanks so much for allowing me to share a little bit about myself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kristen Gideon, and just take a little bit of time to just say thank you for being here today. And thank you to Father David and Kit for reaching out to me and asking me to stand for Vestry. It's quite an honor. As David said, this is a wonderful slate of officers, and I think the church is in really good hands with whoever gets elected. It's also an incredible current vestry, which is one of the reasons I chose to stand, because just to learn and to work with the current vestry members would just be wonderful. So I am recently back to Lancaster. I grew up here. I was actually born in Anchorage, Alaska, but grew up here. And I'm very comfortable with the weather today. But was born and raised here in Lancaster. Started attending St. James in high school because I had a friend that was in the choir, and it just felt like home to me when I would come with her. But what has brought me back to Lancaster, I moved back right before the pandemic in October of 2019. And St. James was a big reason for moving back to Lancaster. I remember the community would come here during the holidays, and just really felt a call to be back in this area. Of course, I started back here during the pandemic, which we all know was a little bit of a hybrid, but there was a call for altar guild help. And as Father Glenn spoke today in his sermon, an invitation perhaps. And I said yes to that invitation to join the Altar Guild. And through the Altar Guild, I got to know Carol and Deb, who gently pressed me into service as an EM, and began to get to know more and more people that way. Through the Altar Guild, I met Mary Ann Marati, who said, hey, Kristen, come join Buildings and Grounds Committee. You probably have some experience that we could use. And to that, I'm a professional landscape architect. And And so I was very honored to join the Buildings and Grounds Committee. Again, another wonderful committee of people who are just have an incredible wealth of knowledge about the campus, as well as the buildings and what it takes to take care of our incredible asset that we have here. So it's just been a wonderful opportunity to continue to get to know people in just really small, meaningful ways here at St. James. So just again, a little bit about me. In the time that I wasn't here in Lancaster, I lived in Stowe, Vermont for a while. I worked for the little ice cream company that's up there called Ben and Jerry's. I was also an EMT volunteer while I was there. So again, being part of my community is really important to me. And I was able to do that when I lived in Vermont as an EMT, and it was really an incredible experience. Also lived in Alexandria, Virginia, and most recently Baltimore, Maryland. So as my work as a landscape architect, I do a lot of commercial work. I work with K through 12 schools. I work with healthcare. I work with affordable housing and urban planning. So again, my heart is really in the community and giving back to the community, and it makes for very meaningful work for me. And also one of the things as a landscape architect is I work collaboratively with a wide range of people, whether it's the owners, other design professionals, or with regulatory agencies. So very much about, a budget, a project goal, and how do we deliver these things on time. And to that brings me to this wonderful long-range plan that was put together over the last year. And it is tremendous. I hope everyone has had a chance to read it. It's incredibly well laid out, well thought out, very professional. And they want to accomplish all this in the next 3 years, which would be my term as a Vestry member. So it's incredibly inspiring that they have put together this plan and these goals, and to be a part of that and to help implement those goals, and to really a milestone in thinking St. James's history, this long-range plan, as I think people will look back on it and say, this was the time that St. James really stepped up and turned the corner and took it to that next level. So I look forward to, seeing how the race goes, and would be honored if you elected me to the Vestry.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Damon Myers. For those of you who don't know, I don't have my name tag today. I feel terrible about that. My husband took my car. That's where my name tag was. So. It's a little bit strange to be asked to come up and ramble on about yourself at forum, but that's what we've been tasked to do today. So here it goes. It's great to see so many familiar faces, and I'm so honored to have been asked to run for Vestry. By way of background, I'll start by pointing out that I was born and mostly raised in the South. As I said in my bio, I was raised in the Baptist church, baptized at a big church in Jacksonville, Florida. And for obvious reasons, as I grew up and moved away to college, I had to separate from the Baptist church, a little bit disillusioned with organized religion as a result of that experience. But I never turned away from God. Studying early music at Florida State University, and then graduate school at New England Conservatory, I was always singing sacred music. And that was my ongoing connection as part of my personal relationship with God that got me through those years. When I got to Boston for grad school, I sang professionally at Church of the Advent on Beacon Hill, for those of you who might know Boston a little bit. And that was my first real long-term exposure to the Episcopal Church. And I thoroughly enjoyed the liturgy, the teaching, and of course, the music. With that same church, I traveled on an exchange tour to Venezuela, ended up moving to Venezuela after that, after graduate school for nearly a year to teach music and English, and my fluency in Spanish was a fringe benefit of that experience. Not long after I returned back to the States, to Boston, I started my own business. Nothing to do with music this time. This was a technology company. That was my other passion. And it was the mid-90s, and by early 2000, we were 40 employees and 100 clients. So in 2001, a little bit exhausted, I sold the company and took a much-needed break from my business endeavors to recharge my thoroughly spent batteries. Spent 3.5 years traveling the world. Went completely around, started in Europe, lived in Spain and in the Netherlands, traveled most of Western Europe during that time, then moved on to Australia for 6 months, and finally lived a good long time in Hawaii. I did plan to visit Asia on that trip, but it was kind of when SARS was happening, so that was ill-advised. That was not a good idea. I did manage to sing professionally while I was in Australia. I had a contact there from graduate school, so that worked out great. And I also sung professionally in Hawaii. I moved back to the mainland in 2005 to Miami, where I had lived just before embarking on this round the world adventure. And here's where things took a little bit of a strange turn. I was recruited while I was in Miami to start a wine distribution company. I met a guy in Spain previously, and wine had always been a hobby, but for the next 2+ years, it was actually my job. So that was kind of a fun time. I built a company from nothing to 5 distributors in 8 territories in 18 months. And it was actually the wine business that brought me back to the Northeast. So Brooklyn, New York, to be specific. The owners of the company wanted me to do the same thing in New York that I had just done in Miami. But of course, the recession of 2008, 2009 had different plans. So that was when I decided to get back into my original vocation, technology. And that is when I joined Mount Sinai Health System in New York City as a project manager. So a ton has changed in the last 14 years at Mount Sinai. Now I'm the Director of Enterprise Analytics Services. I manage a team of 15 and a large portfolio of programs and projects that serve every business domain in the health system. But let's get back to the music. It was music that helped me find my way back to church in 2009. I started attending St. Thomas Church, 5th Avenue in New York City after finding an audio webcast one Easter Sunday. I attended under, get this, the same rector that was the rector in Boston when I was at Church of the Advent. So that just felt like the universe and God sort of lining things up for me. So I attended member classes with Father Mead, and I was confirmed at St. Thomas in May of 2010. My mother and my sister were there with me, and it was one of the happiest memories, or is one of the happiest memories of my life. We were all sitting there happy, crying, and had no idea why. In early 2012, get to the end, sorry, trying to watch the clock. I met Dr. Ephraim McTocknop, who is now my husband of 9+ years. We got married in Borough Hall, Brooklyn in 2014, another of the happiest memories of my life. And in June 2015, the next year, the Supreme Court handed down the decision that allowed our marriage to be federally recognized. It's kind of a big deal, especially because he was coming from the Philippines and really helped our situation. So how did we end up in Lancaster? Well, when it was time for Ephraim's contract to end, we decided to put out some feelers in Lancaster. My mother had moved here a few years earlier, and we were visiting a lot. And my mother was here today earlier, but she's an altar guild as well, and she had to go. And Ephraim wanted to be here, but he's working at the hospital, so they're going to be watching. Hi, guys. Later. So, we decided we ended up moving here. I'll skip to my words here so I won't mess it up. So we experienced St. James as visitors first. More than 10 years ago, we came to an early music at St. James concert. We regularly attended a lot with Mom because when we were visiting. And then in mid-2015, we bought a house and moved to Lancaster. Ephraim works for WellSpan. He's at the Good Samaritan Hospital in Lebanon, and I continue working for Mount Sinai Health System in New York, of course, remotely. So the rest, as they say, is history. I started singing in the Compline Choir at some point with JR, as you do. Then I went on mission trips to Puerto Rico. Next thing you know, I'm on the Altar Guild and the Mission and Justice Committee. And now St. James is our beloved church home. And we are so grateful that God led us to this place. And I would be honored to be a member of your vestry. Thank you for the time.
Well, I'm sure you can see as I do how profound an opportunity it is to be part of this parish in its wonderful ways. Also an opportunity that because it is larger than most Episcopal parishes, at least, it can be hard to find traction, connections, and those things that make for a pathway and a community and friendship and those clicks that one needs. So I will, in the time that we've got left, happily just ask a few questions from those who were so good as to share really deep and dear stories. I was loving this. Everybody should run for Vestry so that we all get to know each other better. And there is always something artificial about elections and arbitrary in their outcomes. And yet it is the work of democracy, these being some of the earliest elections that ever happened in Lancaster County were elections for vestry and wardens here in this city. So that sense of office holders, before there was a mayor of Lancaster, there were wardens of Lancaster. This opportunity to get to know you is, I said on Monday night when we were, or maybe it was Wednesday night that we were meeting together, is really the great reason to stand for Vestry. And they will all have new friends and connections. And likewise, we will all have new things and a deeper affection for all those who stand, as well as our gratitude. And I hope inspiration to keep doing what we need to do in these next 3 years, as Kristen articulated. So last week was the long range plan release. That video is up online for us to see. Those presentations last week from Louis Thane and Jean Clark. Next week will be the next 3 candidates who are standing, and the following week our annual general meeting. The elections begin electronically online next Sunday afternoon, and they'll run and close with all of the in-person voting that happens before the 9:30 annual general meeting that happens in church on January 28th at 9:30. So with that, I'd love to just ask each of you if, as we learn to be more inviting and more connecting as a community, if there were something, and it would be great if you had both a positive and a negative, but it doesn't matter. We learn more from the negatives, so don't feel like I can only remember the thing I didn't like. That's really important for all of us to hear, because that will help us. But was there something that was particularly connecting for you in a moment when you were coming as a newcomer, or a pivot point for you in something that St. James was a crossroad experience for you? And was there something that was difficult, like I came here and I just I kept not meeting the people, or I kept not understanding what we were doing with Holy Communion, or that experience of what connected and what disconnected you in that time would be really great to hear something from in the last 10 minutes that we've got together.
I actually only remember the positive. I don't have negative to share. I'm sorry. For me, it was, as I mentioned earlier, it was the music that made the instant connection and continued even before we moved to Lancaster to draw me in. And I also found that St. James had this really lovely balance of, you could be as involved as you wanted to be. It was a very welcoming environment. Everybody was, random people with the name tags would stop and introduce themselves when we were here visiting. We did end up meeting people that we really, and then, you could also be anonymous if you wanted to be. Like, there are times when people are not ready to engage, and we don't want to overwhelm them with our hospitality, as it were. So I've always felt that St. James really has that balance going. When you're ready, we're ready. And if you're not ready, we'll give you space and you can just come and enjoy the music and the worship, the liturgy and the teaching, which is outstanding. And, that's my memory.
It's the negative parking. So, I would say that the thing that keeps being reinforced or that keeps growing is the sense of community in a village. I always talk about my village, and having grown up here in Lancaster, but having been away for 30 years, there's just been this wonderful thing where my past and my present seem to be connecting through people and experiences. And I'll talk to somebody and we'll have a common interest, and all of a sudden it connects back to things from when I was growing up here. So that has been really, really lovely. And it also reinforces that I'm in the right place, that these are my people, and we have shared experiences, but you also can grow from those experiences. And I think those threads that you have and wanting to pull on them and to bring other people in to have those shared experiences, even if they're not part of the village right now, but to meet them and say, hey, I think you might know somebody here, or I think you'd really enjoy meeting this person. So I think it is the community. It is we talk about the third place, right? It's not your home, it's not your work, it's that other place that you go to for community, to laugh, to share, to find support, and to support other people as well. So I think that would be my pro St. James.
So we'll talk about when I came back in 2016, coming to church with Dad as I was living with him the first couple of years, and having been in Chicago and Phoenix for 28 years and seeing other parishes around those two metropolitan areas and being able to sit at St. James and kind of learn all that was going on and all that we were doing and all that we felt besides the Bob and or Ellen factor, for me really said St. James is doing something spectacular. And then, 4 years into it, obviously we were all thrown at the greatest curveball churches could ever be thrown in terms of COVID. And, so impressed sort of being there and, being here for some funerals where there weren't a lot of people and so forth, and knowing everything that the church as well as they did. And, I am so proud of this place. And I think that the programs, the foundation, the future vision that we have as a church is incredibly exciting. And there's nowhere to go but up. City churches have a monumental task ahead of them in terms of staying connected and wanting to bring people together here. And I do believe St. James has that foundation as we move forward. So, I don't really have too many things that I could say to improve on. I just really think we as a congregation can always do more to smile, stretch our hand out, hug people, love people. And that can always be, a point of chance improvement, if you will. Thanks.
Let's thank those who are standing, and really a terrific set of conversations and presentations this morning, which are inspiring and set us up really well for the coming weeks. Thank you so much.